On our newscast tonight, more Korean government ministries meet at the presidential office today. The focus this time was on ways to make Korean society safer. New CCTV footage shows a missing young Korean man in Turkey may have willingly traveled with people with possible links to the Islamic State in order to join the militant group. President Barack Obama pushes a policy of middle-class economics. It's all about taxing the wealthy and helping the middle class. Republicans are not too pleased. Stay with us for these stories and more on Early Edition at 6.
It's 6 p.m. on a Wednesday evening here in Korea. Hello and welcome. This is Daniel Chef for Early Edition at 6.
And I'm Lee Ji-yoon. Thanks for joining us tonight. We begin over at the nation's top office. Beefing up safety measures topped the agenda at a meeting of some 8 government bodies today. And in the spotlight was the new safety minister who promised to make a safer society for the people. Our Choi Yu-sun starts us off.
The head of the new safety ministry, established in the aftermath of last year's deadly ferry accident, has vowed to ensure a fast response to major crises in the nation. A special rescue team will be formed to reach an accident or disaster site anywhere in the country within 30 minutes on land and an hour by sea. A lax response to the sinking of the Sewol-ho ferry last April was largely blamed for the deaths of more than 300 passengers. Safety Minister Park In-young said he will bolster the ministry's fire service and Coast Guard rescue operations and hold more public servants accountable for laxity. Inspections of public facilities will be carried out annually, and safety education will be offered to all Koreans, from toddlers to the elderly. The safety minister also talked about turning a problem into an opportunity by expanding the use of information and communications technology in safety management and creating jobs in new areas such as safety consulting and monitoring. Saying that government reform is the very beginning of all reforms, the administration minister said he will integrate overlapping public projects and services to more efficiently cater to the needs of the public. Public servants will be encouraged to initiate and innovate through incentives, and those involved in corruption will face dire consequences.
We plan to expand bonuses for good performance for the salaried positions. It's a step towards implementing a performance-based system in public service.
And to encourage greater specialization in public service, government employees will be limited to the number of times they can be transferred from one ministry to another, and more positions will be open to experts from the private sector. Choi Yu-sun, Arirang News. And the country's law enforcement officials also took part in that meeting. There, they said they will do all they can to root out social crimes, especially in the wake of some horrifying cases of child abuse we've seen in the past few weeks. Here's our Park Ji-won with this report.
Korea's Ministry of Justice has stressed that a firm legal foundation has to underpin the government's plans for structural reform. Laying of his ministry's plans for 2015 to President Park Geun-hye on Wednesday, Justice Minister Hwang Kyo-wan focused on ways to re-establish law and order, build a law-abiding society, and eradicate deep-rooted crimes. The ministry says the protection of Korea's constitutional values are at the core of attempts to maintain and strengthen law and order. It says pro-North Korean campaigns and illegal protests will be subject to stricter crackdowns. The Justice Ministry will also strengthen legal education for young people and ordinary citizens in conjunction with the Education Ministry to foster a more law-abiding society. The ministry will also focus on crime prevention. A top priority is tackling child abuse, a reflection of the public's fury over recent child abuse cases. The government plans to inspect every daycare center and build a stronger network with the police to swiftly respond to abuse cases. Sex crimes, as well as domestic and school violence, and crimes related to the unsanitary management of food are other areas the ministry has vowed to stamp out. The government also aims to increase support for the victims of crime. The government is also going to strengthen its pro bono legal services in a joint effort with Korea Legal Aid Corporation. The Anti-Corruption and Civil Rights Commission of Korea stresses that rooting out corruption and raising the level of social trust is key to achieving the government's lofty goals. It vowed a swift passage of comprehensive anti-corruption bill that's currently pending at the National Assembly. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
North Korea wants to talk, this time with the United States. Although the North showed a desire for dialogue with the U.S. earlier this month, this time North Korea seems quite determined to get those talks going. Here's Arirang's Hwang Sung-hee for more.
North Korea has reiterated its readiness to mend fences with the United States. The Chosun Shinbo, a pro-North Korea newspaper based in Japan, claimed Wednesday that Pyongyang's recent proposal to Washington should not be taken as a mere charm offensive. Earlier this month, Pyongyang proposed to temporarily suspend its nuclear tests if Washington canceled its joint military drills with Seoul. That proposal was flatly rejected by the U.S. The paper said North Korea does not want talks for talk's sake, but to make serious progress in their dialogue. To do that, it said the two sides must come to the negotiating table without any military threats. But on the same day, in a separate paper, North Korea made more threats directed at the U.S. Through the state-run Nodongshinmun newspaper, Pyongyang said it will launch defensive counteractions if Seoul and Washington conduct joint drills in March as planned. The paper urged the U.S. to halt its rehearsal for an invasion, calling it a key precondition to easing inter-Korean tensions. While Pyongyang seems to be testing the waters with Washington, some analysts say a bilateral meeting between the two Koreas could open a path to engagement. But that would have to come after North Korea gave a much-awaited response to South Korea's offer for talks made last month. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
He talked about Texas terror and diplomacy. During his much-anticipated State of the Union address on Tuesday, U.S. President Barack Obama talked about his plans to help the middle class and to protect the country from terrorist attacks. With more, here's our Son Jung-in.
U.S. President Barack Obama used his annual State of the Union address to turn the page from an era of terror and recession to one of expanding economic opportunity. Emphasizing that the country's economy is growing and creating jobs at the fastest pace since 1999, he started his speech by calling on Congress to join him in enacting his so-called middle-class economics policy. He pledged to help middle-class families afford child care, college, and health care by collecting more tax from high-income earners and large financial institutions. Speaking to a room full of more Republicans than Democrats for the first time during his term, he said helping hard-working families make ends meet will lead to a stronger economy in the years to come. Obama also discussed the foreign policy issues.
We stand united with people around the world who've been targeted by terrorists, from a school in Pakistan to the streets of Paris. We will continue to hunt down terrorists and dismantle their networks, and we reserve the right to act unilaterally, as we have done relentlessly since I took office, to take out terrorists who pose a direct threat to us and our allies.
Stressing that his first duty as commander-in-chief is to defend the country, he asked Congress to pass legislation granting him authorization to fund the ongoing battle against the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria. He also addressed efforts to eradicate Ebola in West Africa and plans to normalize relations with Cuba. In addition, he urged Congress to pass new cybersecurity legislation in the wake of the cyber attack on Sony Pictures, which the administration blames on North Korea. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
And it looks like the worst fears of the families and friends of the young Korean man who went missing in Turkey is being realized. Korean authorities said today there is a good chance the teenager, or the 18-year-old, crossed the border of his own volition and was neither forced nor kidnapped. They've also found more clues indicating the young man had some interest in the Islamic State militant group. Our Kwon So-hwa has this report.
It's been more than 10 days since a male Korean tourist, known only by his surname Kim, went missing in Turkey. But there is growing speculation that he may somehow be linked to the Islamic State. On Wednesday, the Seoul Metropolitan Police Agency announced the results of its preliminary investigation into the disappearance, saying the 18-year-old crossed the border into Syria voluntarily. The police say there is a low chance that he was forced or kidnapped. They have not found any evidence that he is involved in the militant group, but there are clues showing his interest. Investigators restored Kim's computer, finding that as of January last year, a sixth of Kim's key search words were related to the Islamic State. He also expressed his interest in the group on social networking services. But police have not yet found any information about Kim's pen pal Hassan. According to Kim's mother, the two have been exchanging email. Local Korean news channel YTN reported that Kim had left a message for his family before embarking on his trip, which says Joint IS, suggesting he was telling his parents he was going to join the group. The 18-year-old's whereabouts are still unknown following his disappearance on January 10th from the Turkish border city of Kilis. If he is found to have joined the Islamic State, he will be the first known Korean to have done so. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
The Korean government plans to continue to implement structural reforms to boost the country's growth momentum. In an economy-related ministers' meeting on Wednesday, Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan said the detailed programs to promote corporate investment would be ready by the end of this month. He also said the government will lay out plans for a second phase of financial sector reforms by the first half of the year that will facilitate money flowing into businesses. In a separate meeting later in the day, the minister said businesses should take an active role in carrying out the reforms instead of just leaning on government support. Every year, heads of states and VIPs get together in the small alpine city of Davos in Switzerland for the World Economic Forum. The annual forum kicks off on Wednesday, and this year focus is on tackling global economic challenges. Our Song Ji-san tells us more.
This year's World Economic Forum annual meeting is being held against a backdrop of multiple challenges to the global economy. Financial uncertainties, regional conflicts, and the uneven global economic recovery will be weighing on the minds of those flying into Davos. Some 40 heads of state, including German Chancellor Angela Merkel, French President François Hollande, and Chinese Premier Li Keqiang, and 2,500 other business and society leaders will flock in to discuss the new global context. The challenges include the resolution of geopolitical crises in the wake of conflicts in Ukraine and the Middle East and the rise of Islamic State. The program also includes discussions on pandemics and health after Ebola took the lives of several thousand West Africans and some Western aid workers.
We have to deal with the issues to foster the growth on a global level. We have to deal with the challenges we see on the geopolitical level, for example, in Europe, in the Eurozone, but as well as the crisis in the Ukraine. We have also to deal with the Middle East issues, IS, Middle East, terrorism in North Africa.
On the opening day, Chinese Premier Li Keqiang will give a keynote speech on China's growth. That's one to keep an eye on, as it marks the first appearance by a Chinese leader in Davos in 6 years. IMF Chief Christine Lagarde and other economists will discuss the results of quantitative easing on the second day, and on the last day of the forum, look out for the forum's global economic outlook and 2015 agenda. South Korea's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se will give a speech on Seoul's unification policy, titled Unified Korea, Infinite Possibilities, on Thursday's Korean Night. Yoon will lay out Seoul's vision for unification, as this year marks the 70th anniversary of Inter-Korean division. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Last year was a golden time in terms of gold sales. It was up. More Koreans were snapping up gold last year, with gold sales almost doubling from the previous year. This was largely helped by increased sales of smaller gold bars. The Korea Gold Exchange says the volume of gold bar sales came to just over 1,380 kilograms last year. But what's interesting is that 70% of that total was in smaller sized bars, weighing less than 50 grams. Meanwhile, sales of 1 kilogram bars were down. An official from the exchange says middle-class Koreans are snapping up small gold bars because they are considered a safer investment option than stocks or real estate. Gold prices have nearly tripled over the past decade. 1 ounce or 28 grams of gold was trading at just under $1,300 on Tuesday. Well, I dare say that one of people's top New Year's resolutions here in Korea was probably to quit smoking. Some by circumstance more than by choice, while some might have broken that resolution even before sunset. Many here in Korea are actually going the extra mile to stick with it after cigarette prices almost double starting this year. Our Kim Min-ji tells us what some of these smokers are doing to stick with their game plan.
With prices up and fewer places to light up, many smokers in Korea have made resolutions to quit smoking this year, or cut down at least. Kim Ji-mo, who has been smoking for 8 years, is one of them. To get started, he sought the help of a tobacco cessation clinic.
Well, the tax increase came quite suddenly, and smokers like myself didn't have time to adjust. And I am being really forced to quit smoking.
Tobacco cessation clinics nationwide have seen a surge in visitors this year, and specialists are apparently too busy to sit down for an interview. Health Ministry data shows that more than 100,000 people registered for smoking cessation programs as of last week, up 4 times from a year ago. Those who sign up visit a clinic for about 6 months and undergo counseling. Others are exploring a range of alternatives.
The market for products that help smokers kick the habit, such as this nicotine-free inhaler or chewing gum, is expected to get a boost from cigarette price hike this year.
Sales of e-cigarettes, for one, have been booming since the start of the year.
I've seen sales jump about 3 to 4 times. Sometimes I get so many phone inquiries that I can't attend to the customers that visit.
E-cigarettes have become popular for both the variety of flavors and as a way to cut down or quit gradually.
Before turning to e-cigarettes, I smoked for about 20 years. I changed because it's cheaper in the long run, and there is no smell, so I can freely interact with others.
Other smoking cessation products, such as patches and inhalers, also saw a sharp increase in sales during the first 2 weeks of January from a year ago. The first month of the year is normally a time when sales of such products jump, but with the higher prices here to stay for good, the market is likely to get bigger. Whether the craze will lead to an overall decrease in the smoking rate, which the government hopes to see decline to 35% from the current 42%, is something only time will tell. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
And despite warnings that texting or talking on the phone while driving could actually kill you, more people here in Korea are using their phones while on the road. A survey by Hyundai Marine and Fire Insurance shows over 90% of drivers said they check their smartphones when they're behind the wheel. 7 out of 10 in the group said they check their phones when stopped at a traffic light, and the rest when they're stuck in traffic or driving in residential areas. People caught using a phone while driving here in Korea are fined around $60 US.
Over the last 2 days, we've been taking a look at how the government has been supporting startups here in Korea. This third installment of our 5-part series covers a different side. Our Hwang Ji-hye helps us take a look at the obstacles that startups face due to lack of large-scale private funding.
Facebook 8, Google 35. That's the number of startups the 2 U.S. tech giants bought last year alone. Korea's Samsung Electronics, less than 1 startup a year on average over the past decade. The head of an association of angel investors says Korean conglomerates instead focus on recruiting engineers with innovative ideas from either suppliers or rival companies.
We have yet to build up a corporate culture that actively embraces M&As, which rewards startups with attractive valuations.
And the corporate practices, experts say, make it hard for venture capitals to thrive in Korea, as M&A deals are the best way for angel investors to make big bucks. While such incentives encourage investors to seek opportunities to turn innovative ideas into lucrative businesses, the lack of them has limited the growth of the pool of venture capital. It stood at roughly $2.3 billion last year, little changed from $2 billion 3 years ago. Building up startup success stories is also critical.
In Korea, there aren't many successful angel funds out there. This is because so many investors got their fingers burnt in the wake of the dot-com crash in the early 2000s.
To achieve the government's goal of making startups Korea's next growth engine, experts say educational reform is vital. Many critics say the Korean educational system's emphasis on rote memory and discipline stifles creativity and entrepreneurial spirit. Hwang Jie, Arirang News.
An exhibition in Japan is showing controversial works of art that come with a clear message for the conservative government.
And visitors keep on coming. Proof that there are Japanese individuals who are brave enough to accept historic facts instead of glorifying wartime atrocities. Here's our Shin Se-min.
The artworks at this gallery are a rather uncommon sight, especially in Tokyo. All have been pulled from previous exhibitions or ignored by other museums for violating Article 9 of Japan's constitution. The article says the country is against a display of artwork related to Japan's wartime past, including its system of sexual enslavement. One of the pieces on display is a statue of a young girl who represents the victims of Japan's wartime sexual slavery program.
She has a solemn expression on her face, and seeing that on a little girl's face breaks my heart.
The statue was created by the same Korean couple that made a bronze statue honoring the victims that sits across from the Japanese embassy in Seoul. The statue on display in Japan was pulled out of a museum in Tokyo in 2012 because of the political nature of the work. Artist Kim Sa-kyung says she is glad to see that her piece is changing viewers' perceptions of the sex slavery issue.
Many viewers seem to have had a distorted image of the sex slave issue and the sculpture, but they go home with the realization that the victims of Japan's wartime sex slavery weren't fighting back. The expression on the young woman's face is calm.
The exhibition curator says she wanted to show pieces that haven't been seen before because they make reference to Japan's wartime past. She also hopes it'll help efforts to press the Abe administration to address these issues.
I specifically wanted to express that the freedoms of speech and expression are being violated.
People interested in another version of Japan's wartime past continue to visit the exhibition, regardless of their government's strong stance against it. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
And now the weather, these days we have some mild temperatures, but once the sun calls it quits, it gets really, really cold.
Yes, and I'm finding it hard for myself to stay healthy because of all these temperature changes. Well, let's turn to our Michelle Park at the Weather Center to see if she can give us any advice for staying healthy through the winter. Michelle?
Good evening, guys. Like you said, lots of people, including myself, are having a hard time adjusting to the weather these days. So I found some foods that we can try out for dinner tonight that will make you feel healthy and full. Now, they are mostly full of minerals and vitamin B and C, and they will help you boost your immune system. So make sure to try them out and stay healthy for the rest of the winter. Now back to the weather. It looks like the precipitation that's expected tonight will continue until tomorrow morning, but the sun will be back out by noon and temperatures are expected to stay mild throughout the week and even after the rain. However, always keep in mind of the huge temperature gaps from the day to the evenings. And to our readings for tomorrow, so we'll start off the Thursday morning at 1 and gets up high at 7 degrees, while Daegu and Busan will top out at 7 and 8 degrees respectively. Now to other regions, Jeju Island gets up to 7 as well. Dokdo hits down to 4, while Angkanggang dips low to -5 degrees. Well, that's all for now, Michelle Park, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.
You know, I'm going to try to cook that octopus for dinner. Maybe it'll help me to stay healthy.
Hopefully it will.
All right, that does it from us. Thank you for watching, and have a safe ride home if you're tuning in from Korea. I'm Lee Ji-yoon.
And I'm Daniel Che, wishing our viewers in different time zones a great start to your day. Do join us for more at same time tomorrow.